We've always said that buying a ticket doesn't guarantee you entry into the country, and you have to ensure that you can come in. We have facilitated already even on other events, even with respect to CONCACAF, we have issues when it comes to our Gold Cup, for instance, when Cuba qualifies. We work through the State Department or the equivalent of the State Department in Mexico and Canada to ensure that obviously the people are able to come in. If there's reasons they can't come in, those are nothing to do with the organizers of any event, whether it be a World Cup or Olympics. Those are within the preview of a country.
Millions of football fans are set to travel to North America this summer, all for the beautiful game. But the ugly reality of geopolitics and the Trump administration's aggressive immigration crackdown have led to growing calls for a boycott.
What we are going to witness is a kind of propaganda event for Donald Trump and his policies and what he stands for.
Rafał Pankowski is with the Never Again Association, a Poland-based anti-racism group. He says the tournament will not be safe for visible minorities and will serve to validate Donald Trump's aggressive policies.
Hey, back off.
While the idea to boycott the tournament is not new, it has picked up steam due in part to Trump's efforts to seize control of Greenland and after 2 people were killed by ICE agents in Minneapolis.
As a fan, I simply wouldn't go. It's dangerous.
Mark Pieth is a Swiss lawyer who worked closely with FIFA on governance reforms a decade ago. He isn't calling for a boycott per se, but is urging fans to stay away.
It's tragic that we have the US now on the list together with Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, and so on, with autocracies, with dictatorships, and so on. That is just not something we were expecting.
FIFA has effectively left people who have already bought tickets for the 2026 World Cup in a highly precarious position, and surprisingly, almost no one is talking about it. Victor Montagliani, a FIFA vice president, has openly acknowledged an uncomfortable truth. Holding a World Cup ticket does not guarantee that you will be allowed to enter the United States. That fact alone should give any fan pause. A supporter can spend thousands of dollars on match tickets, international flights, hotels, and related expenses, yet still risk being turned away at the US border because of immigration policies under Donald Trump. This is not a vague comment or speculation from a peripheral figure. It is a statement from someone near the very top of FIFA, who is essentially saying that whether you actually get into the stadium is not the organization's responsibility. That admission has led many to recall a warning issued years ago by Sepp Blatter, who argued that awarding the World Cup to the United States was a high-risk gamble. At the time, plenty of people mocked him, dismissing the remarks as the bitterness of a disgraced former FIFA president trying to cling to relevance. Yet what Montagliani has now said suggests that Blatter identified the problem far earlier than most were willing to admit. Blatter warned that domestic political instability in the US, combined with a hardline approach to immigration and an unpredictable foreign policy, would inevitably create problems for global sporting events. Those warnings were brushed aside. Today, FIFA officials themselves are conceding that they cannot guarantee even the most basic right, access to the tournament for international fans. Blatter may be a symbol of corruption in world football, but he understood geopolitics far better than many would like to acknowledge. He knew that US visa barriers and travel restrictions would eventually collide head-on with FIFA's long-promoted message of being global and inclusive. What is unfolding now suggests that his prediction was not wrong. The situation becomes even more serious in light of a recent statement by a vice president of the German Football Association, a remark significant enough to raise alarms at FIFA headquarters. He openly floated the possibility of boycotting the 2026 World Cup, and drew comparisons to the boycott of the 1980 Olympic Games. When a senior German football official starts invoking such precedents, it is a clear sign that this has moved far beyond an ordinary dispute. And Germany's reaction is not an isolated case. It reflects a growing concern across the international football community that the 2026 World Cup risks becoming a tournament where tickets are sold worldwide, but actual participation is ultimately determined by the border policies of a single country. For fans, especially in Canada, that is a deeply troubling prospect for an event that is supposed to be marketed as a celebration of football for the entire world. This development is extending a familiar chain of events beginning with Donald Trump's threatening remarks about Greenland and the tariff war he launched against European allies. Germany has long demonstrated that it is willing to act when politics crosses the boundaries of sport. It was the leading force behind the mouth-covering protest at the Qatar World Cup, and historically, Germany also played a prominent role in the boycott of the 1980 Olympic Games. Withdrawing from major sporting events when the political environment becomes toxic is not an unfamiliar move for them. If Germany were to take concrete action, Denmark would likely be the first domino to fall. When the US president openly threatens the annexation of Danish territory, it is difficult to imagine Copenhagen calmly taking part in a symbolic tournament hosted under that same administration. The Danish Football Association is still using diplomatic language, saying it is closely monitoring the sensitive situation. In practice, this is a familiar way of signaling that they are waiting to see how Germany responds before making a decision of their own. France is also showing clear hesitation while other European powers remain on the sidelines, observing and assessing their next steps. Major British sports media outlets such as Sky Sports and TalkSport have reported in a way that suggests these boycott threats are now being taken seriously, rather than dismissed as fleeting political theatrics. These are not voices from fringe protest groups. They are senior European football officials asking whether they can participate in a World Cup hosted in the United States without facing real risks to safety and access. Against that backdrop, Montagliani's admission becomes difficult to dispute, reinforcing every warning about a potential boycott that has already been raised. When a FIFA vice president openly confirms that a World Cup ticket does not guarantee entry into the country, it follows that European teams and fans have every reason to be concerned. It is no longer possible to describe boycott threats as an overreaction when FIFA itself acknowledges that it cannot protect international visitors from border decisions. The domino effect is therefore beginning to take shape. European national teams are not only thinking about their supporters, they are considering very concrete scenarios in which German fans are stopped at US customs, while their team is forced to play in front of sparsely populated stands in vast stadiums. That is clearly not the spirit of the World Cup that anyone hopes for. Put yourself in that position. A German supporter spends $1,000 on a ticket, flies more than 8 hours to the United States, only to be denied entry because they share a name with someone on a watch list, or because they traveled to a sensitive country several years earlier. FIFA's response in such a scenario would be starkly detached. We sold you the right to watch a match, not a guarantee of entry into the host country. This is not a rare technical glitch. It is the system functioning exactly as it was designed to. The financial consequences could be just as severe. Major sponsors such as Coca-Cola and McDonald's have invested enormous sums on the assumption that European teams would be present, along with the vast numbers of fans that follow them. If a significant share of traditional football powers were to withdraw, these corporations would have solid grounds to demand refunds or terminate their sponsorship agreements. What fundamentally distinguishes this situation from the human rights controversy surrounding Qatar is that European governments are no longer grappling with abstract moral questions. This time, they are responding to direct threats to national sovereignty and economic coercion from a partner long regarded as an ally. Trump's confrontational foreign policy is creating an environment in which boycotts are no longer unthinkable, but a realistic option. As Europe weighs whether to distance itself from that instability, Mark Carney is carefully positioning Canada as a stable and reliable partner. That approach is clearly gaining traction, as Carney draws on his deep relationships with European leaders to shape what analysts are describing as a safe harbor narrative for the possible relocation of World Cup matches. This is not political theater designed to attract attention. In reality, FIFA is quietly developing contingency plans, and those plans are largely centered on Vancouver, Toronto, Mexico City, and Monterrey as potential alternative venues. The logic behind these calculations is straightforward. Under the original plan, Canada and Mexico are set to host 26 of the World Cup's 104 matches,